Denver, Colorado has always been home to me. The crisp mountain air, the sprawling views of the Rockies, it's the kind of place that settles deep into your bones, promising adventure and a certain kind of calm all at once. For most of my 35 years, I've found that promise to be true, especially in my work. I'm Ryan Clark, and I spend my days designing landscapes, turning forgotten backyards into havens and barren commercial lots into vibrant green spaces. There's a quiet satisfaction in seeing a blueprint come to life, in watching nature respond to a thoughtful touch. It's a world I understand, a world I can control, or so I thought. My world, the one I'd built with my wife, Sarah, felt as if it was slowly but surely turning into a barren lot itself. We'd been married for 8 years, a blur of shared jokes, late-night talks, and the comfortable rhythm of two lives intertwined. Or at least, that's how it used to be. Lately, it felt like the threads that held us together were fraying, snapping one by one, leaving gaping holes in the fabric of what we once were. The change wasn't sudden, no dramatic explosion that tore everything apart. It was a slow, creeping frost, a gradual cooling that I barely noticed at first. It started subtly, with less hand-holding on walks, fewer lingering kisses goodbye. Then it moved to the bedroom, an unspoken territory that became increasingly cold and silent. For 9 months, almost a year, our bed had been just a place to sleep, two separate islands in a sea of unspoken distance. Before that, the year prior, I could count on one hand the number of times we'd been intimate, maybe 4 or 5 at most. It felt like a lifetime ago, a different couple entirely. I tried to talk to her, of course. At first, gently, asking if something was wrong, if she was stressed with work. Sarah works from home, a marketing consultant for a tech company, and her job can be demanding. But her responses were always vague, a shrug, a mumbled, "I'm just tired, Ryan." Her eyes would dart away, never meeting mine, a telltale sign that something deeper was brewing. I'd always prided myself on being a patient man, someone who could nurture and grow things, whether it was a fledgling sapling or a struggling relationship. But Sarah was becoming a mystery, a locked garden I couldn't enter. The lack of intimacy was a gaping wound, but it wasn't the only symptom of this growing sickness in our marriage. It was the little things, the new habits, the subtle shifts in her behavior that started to prickle at my subconscious. Her phone, once left carelessly on the kitchen counter, was now a constant companion, clutched in her hand or hidden face down on the nightstand. If I walked into a room, she'd snap it shut, her fingers flying across the screen, a flicker of something I couldn't quite place, panic, guilt. In her eyes, it was never allowed in my sight. Her laptop, too, became a fortress. She'd always been private with her work, but now it was an impenetrable wall. "Don't touch my laptop, Ryan, it's for work," she'd say, even if I just brushed past it on the desk. It was an unspoken rule, a boundary that solidified into a concrete barrier between us. We didn't have cameras in the house. Why would we? We trusted each other. That's what marriage was supposed to be, wasn't it? Trust. But as the months dragged on, the silence and the secrets began to erode that trust, bit by agonizing bit. My mind, usually focused on soil composition and water features, started to wander down darker paths. Was it me? Had I done something wrong? Was I not enough? The questions gnawed at me, a constant hum of doubt beneath the surface of my everyday life. I'd look at her across the dinner table, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the lamp, and see a stranger. Her smile, once a source of warmth, now felt like a carefully constructed mask. I found myself analyzing every interaction, every glance, every hurried exit from the room when I entered. I hated myself for it, for becoming this suspicious, insecure version of Ryan. But the evidence, or lack thereof, kept piling up, creating a suffocating weight on my chest. The late nights she spent working in her office, the vague excuses for not wanting to go out, the way she'd jump if my phone buzzed next to hers. It was a slow drip, drip, drip of poison into what I once believed was an unshakable foundation. Then, about a month and a half ago, I cracked. The pressure had been building for too long, the unspoken words a heavy stone in my gut. We were sitting in the living room, watching some mindless show, and she was, as usual, engrossed in her phone, her thumb flying across the screen with an intensity that felt personal, intimate, and utterly directed away from me. "Sarah," I said, my voice sounding strained even to my own ears. She didn't look up. "Sarah," I repeated, a little louder, a little harder. She finally lifted her head, her eyes still glazed with whatever she'd been reading. What is it, Ryan? What's so important on your phone?" I asked, the words tumbling out before I could stop them, before I could reason with myself, before I could consider the consequences. It was messy, impulsive, and exactly what I had promised myself I wouldn't do until I had concrete proof. But I was tired of the guessing games, tired of the silence, tired of feeling like a fool. Her eyes narrowed, and a flash of something anger, defiance, crossed her face before it was replaced by a carefully neutral expression. "It's work, Ryan, you know that. Work that can't wait until you're not sitting next to your husband," I pushed, my voice rising slightly. Work that makes you hide your phone every time I walk into a room. Work that makes you suddenly too tired for anything else." She stood up then, her movement stiff. "Are you accusing me of something, Ryan?" Her voice was cold, sharp, and it cut through the air between us. "I don't know, Sarah, am I?" I shot back, my own voice laced with the bitterness that had been simmering for months. That was it. The accusation hung in the air, thick and heavy like a storm cloud ready to burst. I saw her jaw tighten, her shoulders stiffen. And then something shifted. Not an admission, not a denial, but a change in the atmosphere, a subtle crack in her carefully constructed facade. The immediate aftermath was a strange, unsettling quiet. She didn't yell, didn't argue. She just retreated. For a few days, the silence in the house was even heavier, punctuated only by the clinking of dishes or the distant hum of the refrigerator. I regretted calling her out without evidence, knew I'd messed up. Now she'd be even more careful. Now she'd know I was watching. But then something even stranger happened. A week after our confrontation, Sarah began to change, and not in the way I expected. She became lovely, overly so almost. The distant looks were replaced by soft smiles. The guarded phone was still guarded, but her attention suddenly was on me. She'd ask about my day, really listen, her hand resting lightly on my arm. She started cooking my favorite meals again, something she hadn't done in ages. And then there was the sex. After months and months of nothing, of feeling like a ghost in our own bedroom, she practically threw herself at me. It started subtly, a brush of her hand against my thigh as we watched TV, a lingering hug that lasted a little too long. I held out for a week, my guard still up, unsure if this was genuine or some elaborate charade, but she was persistent, almost desperate. One evening, as I was getting ready for bed, she walked into the bathroom, a playful glint in her eyes, and without a word she practically ripped my pants off. The sudden shift was jarring, disorienting. It was like an emotional whiplash. My body, starved for intimacy, reacted almost instinctively, but my mind, my gut was screaming. This felt wrong. Too sudden, too enthusiastic, too perfect. It was like she was trying to overcompensate, to erase the past year of neglect in a week. I found myself in a bizarre new hell. On one hand, I had my wife back, or a version of her. The one who laughed easily, who touched me, who desired me. On the other hand, a cold, hard knot of suspicion had tightened in my stomach. Was this genuine remorse? Or was this guilt, a frantic attempt to cover her tracks, to lull me into a false sense of security now that she knew I was onto her? The new intimacy, rather than soothing my anxieties, amplified them. Every kiss felt like a question, every embrace a potential lie. I'd lie awake at night, her breathing soft beside me, my mind racing. What was really going on? Had I been so blind? My landscape designs were precise, logical, everything had its place. But my life with Sarah had become a wild, overgrown mess, and I couldn't see the path forward. All I knew was that I needed answers, and if she wouldn't give them to me, I was going to have to find them myself, no matter what it cost. The air in our Denver home, once filled with the quiet hum of shared life, now felt thick with unspoken questions. Sarah's sudden warmth, her eager touches, and the way she'd now meet my gaze with a practiced softness didn't calm my anxieties, they amplified them. It was like living in a perfectly manicured garden that I knew deep down was riddled with pests. Every gesture of affection, every whispered endearment felt like a deliberate performance, a veil she was trying to pull over my eyes. I was caught in a cruel paradox. The more she tried to make things right, the more convinced I became that something was terribly wrong. My days, once so predictable and grounding, became a torturous dance. At work, my focus on landscape blueprints blurred. I'd stare at intricate designs, my mind miles away, replaying snippets of conversations, analyzing Sarah's expressions, trying to find a crack in her carefully constructed facade. My colleagues, used to my quiet concentration, started to notice. "Everything all right, Ryan?" my boss, Mark, asked one afternoon, his brow furrowed as he watched me absently tracing a line on a plan. "Just a lot on my mind, Mark," I'd mumbled, a lie that felt heavier than the truth. How could I explain that my own home had become a surveillance project, my wife the suspect? The first thing I needed was access. Sarah's phone and laptop remained impenetrable fortresses. She kept her phone on her at all times, even when she went to the bathroom, and her laptop was always locked, often taken into her office and shut away even if she was just stepping out for a minute. The old Sarah would have left it open, trusting me. This new Sarah, the loving Sarah, was more guarded than ever. I tried subtle approaches first. "Hey, my phone's dead," I'd say casually, reaching for hers. "Can I just check the weather really quick?" Her hand would shoot out, snatching it away. "Oh, it's fine, I can tell you," she'd say, her voice overly sweet, a nervous flicker in her eyes. Or, "My laptop's acting up, mind if I borrow yours for a second to look something up for a client?" A quick, firm shake of her head. "Sorry, Ryan, I've got sensitive client information on there. Company policy." Each denial, delivered with a smile, was a fresh stab, confirming my worst fears. It wasn't about work, it was about secrets. One evening after she'd fallen asleep beside me, or so I thought, I slowly, carefully reached for her phone on the nightstand. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the silent room. My fingers brushed the cool metal, and just as I started to lift it, her hand shot out, grasping my wrist with surprising strength. Her eyes, wide and startled, met mine in the dim light. "Ryan, what are you doing?" she whispered, her voice laced with fear or perhaps anger. Just checking the time," I stammered, pulling my hand back as if burned. She didn't release my wrist immediately. Her gaze held mine, a silent accusation passing between us. "You scared me," she finally said, her voice softening, but her grip remained tight for a moment longer. "Go back to sleep." I lay there, feigning sleep, my mind racing, the failure burning in my chest. She hadn't let go of the phone, not even in her sleep, it seemed. The next day, a new strategy formed. I needed something less direct, something that wouldn't immediately trigger her defenses. I remembered a friend, Mike, who worked in it. He was a wizard with computers, always bragging about his ability to bypass any security system. I hated the thought of involving someone else in our private hell, but I was desperate. I called him, making up a story about my own laptop being locked by a virus and needing a way to recover some important files without losing everything. Mike, ever the helpful tech guy, walked me through a few basic tricks, mostly relating to password recovery tools. Nothing that would directly help with Sarah's phone or a locked company laptop, but he did mention that most web browsers store passwords, and sometimes with the right tools those could be extracted. It was a long shot, but a shot nonetheless. My opportunity came a few days later. Sarah had a rare client meeting in person, which meant she had to leave the house. She'd always taken her laptop with her, but this time in her rush she left it on her desk, plugged in but locked. She'd forgotten to power it down completely. I knew I had a limited window. My hands trembled as I sat in her office chair, a place I rarely ventured. The screen glowed, demanding a password. I tried the obvious ones first: her birthday, our anniversary, her pet's name from childhood. Nothing. My heart sank with each failed attempt. This was harder than I thought. Then I remembered what Mike had said about browser passwords. I didn't know how to access them directly from the lock screen, but I knew she used Chrome. If I could just get to the browser, maybe I could find something. I started searching for bypass Windows 10 login on my own phone, heart pounding. The methods were complex, involving bootable USB drives and command prompts far beyond my limited tech skills. Frustration bubbled up inside me. I was a landscaper, not a hacker. I was good at cultivating life, not uncovering secrets. As I was about to give up defeated, I noticed a sticky note tucked beneath her monitor, half hidden by a stack of papers. It was a jumble of letters and numbers, seemingly random, but then I saw it, a small, handwritten asterisk next to one of the sequences. A code. I typed it into the password field, my breath held tight in my chest. The screen flickered. And then it opened. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely navigate the mouse. I was in. I felt a surge of triumph, quickly followed by a wave of nausea. This was it, the moment of truth. I went straight to Chrome, to the saved passwords section. My fingers flew across the keyboard, searching for anything unusual. Gmail, Facebook, online shopping sites, all the usual suspects. Nothing that screamed affair. I felt a strange mix of relief and disappointment. Relief that maybe, just maybe, I was wrong. Disappointment that the answers I craved were still elusive. Then, scrolling further down the list, I saw it. An email address I didn't recognize, linked to an account on a dating app I'd only heard about in hushed tones from friends, discreet encounters. My blood ran cold. The screen seemed to spin. I clicked on it, my heart hammering against my ribs, convinced I was about to find undeniable proof. But the password field for that particular entry was blank, completely empty. It wasn't saved. My mind reeled. Why would she have an account on a dating app, even if the password wasn't saved, if she wasn't using it? The name itself, Discreet Encounters, sent a shiver down my spine. This wasn't some casual social media site. This was for exactly what I feared. Just as I was about to dig deeper to try and find a way to recover the password or find other clues, I heard the faint sound of tires on the driveway. Sarah was home. Panic seized me. I slammed the laptop shut, the screen going black with a jarring finality. I scrambled out of her chair, my hands flying as I tried to put everything back exactly as it was. The sticky note, the papers, her mouse. My heart was pounding, a wild, panicked animal in my chest. I raced into the living room, trying to compose myself to look normal. Sarah walked in moments later, her keys jingling, a bright smile on her face. "Hey, honey, you won't believe the traffic." That meeting ran long. She leaned in to kiss me, and I forced myself to respond, my lips feeling numb. Her eyes, however, lingered on mine for a fraction of a second too long, a tiny wrinkle forming between her brows. "Are you okay? You look a little pale." Just a long day, I mumbled, trying to sound convincing, thinking about a new design for the Miller project. The lie felt bitter on my tongue. She shrugged, seemingly satisfied, and walked toward the kitchen. I watched her go, my entire body rigid with adrenaline and fear. I had failed. I had been so close, and then fear had paralyzed me. The evidence was there, screaming at me, but I hadn't gathered it. Now she knew I was shaken, even if she didn't know why. My clumsy attempt had only made things worse. The encounter solidified my conviction, though. The discreet encounter's account was a smoking gun, even without a password. It confirmed that my suspicions weren't just paranoia. She was hiding something potentially devastating, but now she was more vigilant than ever. The laptop was always with her, the phone never out of her grasp. Our home became a silent battlefield, every interaction a carefully orchestrated maneuver. Her sudden affection continued, a suffocating blanket of false intimacy. We'd make love, and I'd close my eyes, trying to conjure the old Sarah, the one who loved me without question. But all I could feel was the cold, hard knot of deceit growing tighter with each passing day. The beautiful garden of our marriage was dying, and I felt utterly powerless to stop it. I was losing myself in this twisted game, becoming a shadow of the man I once was. The once vibrant colors of my life had dulled to a monochrome palette of suspicion and despair. I knew I needed to act, to find a way to expose the truth, or this gnawing uncertainty would consume me entirely. But how? How do you catch a ghost when it's living right beside you, pretending to be the woman you love? The dread that settled in my gut after that laptop incident refused to budge. It festered, growing colder and harder with each passing day. The discreet encounter's account, even without a password, was a stark, brutal image seared into my mind. It was a brand, burning away any last vestiges of hope or doubt I had left. Sarah was doing exactly what I feared. She was systematically dismantling our life, piece by piece, while I was left to pick up the shards. Her sudden, overwhelming affection became a torment. Every touch, every kiss, every whispered term of endearment felt like a betrayal. Her hands, once a source of comfort, now felt like shackles, binding me to a lie. When she'd smile, her eyes sparkling with what seemed like genuine warmth, I'd see a flicker of that dating app interface, a cold, digital truth lurking beneath the surface. It was a constant performance, and I was the captive audience, forced to applaud while my world burned. My work, once my sanctuary, became another casualty. The vibrant greens of client lawns seemed dull, the intricate designs for water features felt meaningless. How could I cultivate beauty and growth when my own life was turning into a barren wasteland? Mark, my boss, started calling me into his office more frequently. "Ryan, are you sure everything's okay? You've missed 2 deadlines this week, and your focus, it's just not there." He was trying to be kind, but his words only twisted the knife deeper. I was failing at everything, a man adrift, lost in a sea of suspicion and despair. I tried to act normal, to go through the motions. We'd have dinner, she'd ask about my day, and I'd offer some generic answer, my mind miles away, dissecting her every move. She'd offer to watch a movie, and I'd nod, sitting beside her on the couch, acutely aware of the distance between us, even as she leaned into me. The physical intimacy, once so eagerly sought, now left me feeling emptier than before. It wasn't love, it was an act, and I was a silent participant, a complicit fool. Each embrace felt like a hollow victory for her, a confirmation of her ability to manipulate. I knew I couldn't go on like this. The uncertainty was a corrosive acid, slowly eating away at my soul. I needed proof, hard, undeniable evidence that would force her to confront the truth, or at least free me from this agonizing purgatory. But how? She was too careful now. The laptop never left her side if she was home, and her phone was practically surgically attached to her hand. I spent hours online, late into the night, my own laptop glowing in the darkness of our living room. I researched everything: spyware, hidden cameras, forensic data recovery. The terms themselves felt dirty, clandestine, a world far removed from the honest, sun-drenched work I usually did. I felt a profound sense of shame of having sunk to this level. But then I'd remember the discreet encounter's account, the coldness in her eyes before the performance began, and the shame would curdle into a fierce, desperate resolve. I considered a private investigator. I looked up agencies in Denver, imagining a sleek, trench-coated figure shadowing Sarah, snapping photos of her clandestine meetings. But the cost was prohibitive, tens of thousands of dollars, money I didn't have to spare, especially if I was facing a divorce. And more than that, there was a part of me that still needed to do this myself. This was my marriage, my betrayal. I needed to see it, to understand it with my own eyes. My research led me down a rabbit hole of digital forensics. I found forums, tech blogs, and even a few dark corners of the internet discussing ways to remotely access devices. It was complex, far beyond my capabilities as a landscaper. I needed someone with technical expertise, but someone I could trust, someone who wouldn't judge, and someone who wouldn't reveal my desperation to the world. My friend Mike, the IT wizard, kept popping into my head. He was a good guy, always willing to help, but how could I explain this to him? Hey Mike, remember how you helped me with that fake virus on my laptop? Well, I need you to help me install spy software on my wife's computer because I think she's cheating. The words felt ludicrous, impossible. He'd think I was crazy or worse, a controlling monster. Still, the idea of getting help gnawed at me. I needed an angle, a plausible excuse. I remembered Mike mentioning offhand a few months ago that his own wife had been having issues with her company laptop getting mysteriously slow, and he'd installed some monitoring software to check for malware and to make sure their kids weren't using it for inappropriate content when they borrowed it. An idea sparked. A few days later, I called Mike. "Hey man," I started, trying to sound casual. "Listen, I've got a weird one for you. Sarah's been complaining about her work laptop. Says it's running really slow, crashing sometimes. She's worried about losing important client data, and her IT department isn't being much help." I paused, letting the lie hang in the air, hoping he'd bite. "Yeah, corporate IT departments are usually useless," Mike commiserated. "What's she running, Windows 10? "Yeah, that's right," I said, trying to keep the excitement out of my voice. "She's totally stressed about it. I was thinking, you know how you mentioned you put that monitoring software on your wife's laptop to check for issues, to make sure it's running cleanly?" Mike chuckled. "Oh yeah, the parental control stuff. Kept the kids from sneaking on YouTube past bedtime. What about it?" "Well," I continued, choosing my words carefully, "I was thinking maybe something similar for Sarah's. Not for parental control, obviously, but just to see what's hogging resources, if there's any malware or something making it slow. She's so swamped with work, and I just want to help her out, get her laptop running smoothly again." There was a moment of silence on the other end, and my heart hammered. Had he seen through it? Was I too obvious? Then Mike's voice came back, thoughtful. Yeah, I get it. Helping her out. You could definitely install something to monitor system resources, check for background processes, network activity. Most of those tools also have a basic keylogger function, just to see what's being typed, which can sometimes flag suspicious programs or even, well, anything, for troubleshooting purposes, of course. The "of course" was laced with an unspoken understanding, a subtle acknowledgement that he knew there might be more to it, but he wasn't going to press. Mike was a good friend. He probably suspected something was up, but he was offering a lifeline without asking for the whole messy truth. "Exactly!" I practically shouted, relief flooding me. "Just for troubleshooting, to get a better handle on what's slowing her down. Could you maybe walk me through what you used or even help me set it up?" "Sure, man," Mike said, his voice easy. "I can send you a link to the software I used and a quick rundown. It's pretty straightforward to install. Just make sure you have administrator access on her laptop, and you'll need a moment alone with it, obviously." A moment alone with it. That was the tricky part. Sarah's vigilance had only intensified after the last incident. Her laptop was her shadow, and the password was, once again, a mystery. My sticky note discovery was a fluke I couldn't rely on again. She de-changed the password, I was sure of it, but now I had a plan. A legitimate reason in Mike's eyes to install monitoring software, and the software, he'd subtly hinted, could do more than just monitor system resources. A keylogger, that was it. If I could install a keylogger, I could get her new password, and then slowly, meticulously, I could unravel the threads of her deception. The opportunity came not long after. Sarah had a late-night work call, a video conference with a client on the East Coast. She was in her home office, door slightly ajar, her voice a low murmur. I was in the living room, pretending to watch TV, my ears straining. This was my chance. I needed to access her laptop, but how? I tried guessing passwords again, using variations of the old one, but nothing worked. I felt a surge of panic. I was back to square one. Then I remembered something else Mike had told me months ago about securing your home network. "Always change the default admin password on your router, Ryan, and use a strong Wi-Fi password. You never know who's trying to snoop around." A thought, chilling and brilliant, struck me. Sarah, as a remote worker, relied entirely on our home Wi-Fi. What if I temporarily cut off the internet? What if I created a situation where she had to ask me for help, giving me an excuse to get my hands on her laptop with her permission? It felt devious, underhanded, but the image of discreet encounters flashed in my mind, fueling my resolve. This wasn't about being a good husband anymore. It was about uncovering a brutal truth. I needed to act. I waited until her call was in full swing, her voice clear and focused, engaged in conversation. Then silently I slipped into the utility closet where our router was kept. With a deep, shaky breath, I pulled the power cord. The house went silent for a moment, then Sarah's voice from her office, sharper now. "Hello, can you hear me? My internet just dropped." My heart hammered. This was it. I waited a beat, then walked calmly towards her office. "Everything okay, honey?" I asked, feigning concern. She looked up, her face a mask of frustration. "No, my internet just died. I'm in the middle of this crucial call. Can you check the router?" "Sure," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "Let me take a look at your laptop too, see if it's an issue on your end or if it's the router. Sometimes they just need a quick reset, but I can check for any errors on your system while I'm at it." She hesitated for a split second, her eyes darting to her laptop, then back to me, the urgency of her client call winning out over her usual paranoia. "Okay, fine, just get it working, Ryan. This is important." Victory, a cold, bitter victory. I went to the closet, plugged the router back in, and waited for the lights to come back on. Then I walked back into her office. "Okay, internet should be back up in a minute. Let me just check your laptop for any lingering issues." She grudgingly slid it towards me, still fumbling with her phone, trying to reconnect to the meeting. I opened the laptop, saw the login screen, and quickly, before she could fully reconnect, I told her, "Just need your password for a second, just to run a quick diagnostic." She sighed, exasperated. She rattled off a string of characters I quickly committed to memory. I typed it in. The screen unlocked. My heart was racing, a drumbeat in my ears. This was it. The moment I'd been waiting for, the opening I'd manipulated into existence. The Keylogger software Mike had sent me the link for was already downloaded to a USB drive hidden in my pocket. I just needed a few minutes while she was distracted with her reconnected call to install it. The garden of our marriage was beyond saving, but I would unearth every single buried root, no matter how ugly the truth might be. The chase was on, and I wouldn't stop until I found what I was looking for. This was my new purpose, my terrible, consuming quest for the truth, even if that truth shattered everything I once held dear. I was ready to face the monster because the alternative was to be devoured by it. This was my reckoning. My hands, once skilled in nurturing life, were now poised to dismantle a lie. I was no longer the patient gardener, I was the relentless hunter. My hands moved with a surgeon's precision, fueled by a mixture of terror and grim determination. Sarah was still fumbling with her phone, her voice a low, exasperated murmur as she tried to reconnect to her client call. I could feel the heat of her laptop beneath my fingers, the silent hum of its operation a stark contrast to the frantic beat of my own heart. I slid the small USB drive from my pocket, its metallic sheen glinting under the dim office light. The software Mike had given me was simple, designed for quick installation. I opened a web browser, navigated to the download, and with a few clicks the executable file was running. A progress bar, agonizingly slow, crept across the screen. Every second felt like an eternity. Every rustle from Sarah's side of the desk made me flinch. "Almost got it, just a sec," I mumbled, trying to sound like I was genuinely troubleshooting her internet connection. She barely registered my words, her focus entirely on her phone and the increasingly frustrated client on the other end. Finally, the installation was complete. A small, inconspicuous icon appeared in the system tray, hidden amongst a dozen others. The program was designed to be virtually undetectable, a silent spy. I ran a quick fake diagnostic just to sell the lie, then closed everything out. "Looks like it was just a router hiccup, Sarah. All good now. Your internet should be stable." She looked up, relief washing over her face. "Thank God, Ryan, you're a lifesaver." Her smile, so seemingly genuine, felt like a punch to the gut. I forced a weak smile back, the bitter taste of deceit clinging to my tongue. I had just planted a digital worm in the heart of our marriage, and she was thanking me for it. The next few days were a blur of restless nights and agonizing anticipation. The keylogger was installed, silently recording every keystroke, every login, every whispered secret. I spent my evenings in our garage, hunched over my old laptop, connecting remotely to Sarah's machine. The software presented the data in a raw, unedited stream, a timeline of her digital life. It was like sifting through wreckage, each piece of information a potential fragment of the truth I sought. At first it was mundane, work emails, shopping sites, social media. Nothing damning, nothing concrete. The discrete encounters account still gnawed at me, but without a password, it was a locked door. I started to wonder if I was wrong, if I had become a paranoid monster, seeing ghosts where there were none. The thought brought a fleeting moment of relief, quickly extinguished by the cold certainty that my instincts had been screaming at me for months. Then late one night, a new entry appeared in the keylogger's log. A string of characters, followed by login, discrete encounters, calm. My breath hitched. It was there. The password. I stared at the screen, my eyes tracing the letters, committing them to memory. It was a jumble of numbers and letters, something entirely new, something she had clearly changed after my first, clumsy attempt to access her laptop. My fingers trembled as I typed the URL into my browser, my heart hammering against my ribs. The login page for discrete encounters appeared, its sleek, anonymous design a chilling testament to its purpose. I entered her email address, then the newly discovered password. The screen loaded, and then it all came crashing down. Her profile appeared, adorned with a picture of her from a vacation we'd taken 2 years ago, a time when our smiles were still genuine, when our world felt whole. Beneath it, a carefully crafted bio, describing herself as seeking discreet companionship and exciting new connections. My vision blurred, the words on the screen swimming before my eyes. But it was the messages that truly shattered me. Pages upon pages of flirtatious exchanges, promises of secret meetings, intimate details shared with strangers, dates set, plans made, excuses fabricated. I saw names, places, times. One name in particular popped up repeatedly: Mark. Not my boss Mark, but a different Mark from a different office building downtown. He was married too, judging by the subtle hints in their conversation. They had been meeting for months, using her late nights at work and client meetings as cover. My blood ran cold, then boiled with a rage so intense it threatened to consume me. I scrolled through, my stomach churning, a nauseating mix of disgust and despair. There were details of her affair that I never wanted to know, vivid descriptions that painted a picture of a betrayal far deeper than I had imagined. It wasn't just physical, it was emotional, a complete surrender of the trust we had once shared. Our lifeless bedroom, her hidden phone, the locked laptop, the sudden, overwhelming affection, it all made horrifying sense now. The silence, the distance, the gaslighting, it was all part of her elaborate charade. I saved everything. Screenshots, message logs, her profile details. I backed it up, copied it to a secure cloud drive, and emailed it to myself. I wasn't going to confront her without irrefutable proof this time. I was going to expose every single one of her lies. The next morning, the air in our home was thicker than ever, heavy with the weight of my terrible knowledge. Sarah, oblivious, moved about the kitchen, humming a cheerful tune. She offered me coffee, her smile bright. I nodded, my throat tight, unable to swallow. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to confront her, to unleash the torrent of anger and pain that was raging within me. But I held back. Not yet. I needed to do this right. I waited until evening, after we'd had a silent, tense dinner. We were in the living room, the TV droning in the background, a pathetic attempt at normalcy. Sarah was predictably on her phone, absorbed in her own world. "Sarah," I said, my voice surprisingly calm, almost detached. She looked up, startled, her thumb pausing mid-scroll. "Yes, Ryan, we need to talk." Her eyes narrowed slightly, a familiar flicker of guardedness returning to them. "About what?" I stood up, walking over to the coffee table. I had my own laptop open, preloaded with the evidence. I turned it towards her, the screen a brutal spotlight on her discreet encounters profile. Her picture, her bio, her smiling face staring back at her, her face drained of all color, her phone clattered to the floor, forgot. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her eyes, wide with horror, darted from the screen to me, then back again. "I know," I said, the words heavy with years of unspoken pain. "I know everything." She stammered. "Ryan, I can explain." But her voice was a broken whisper, devoid of its usual practiced sweetness. The mask had finally shattered. "Explain what, Sarah?" I pressed, my voice rising now, the carefully constructed calm starting to crack. "Explain discreet companionship. Explain exciting new connections with Mark from downtown. Explain why you lied to me, why you starved our marriage, why you made me feel like I was going crazy." Tears welled in her eyes, but they felt cold to me, a performance I no longer believed. "I didn't mean to, Ryan. It just happened. I was lonely. You were always so busy with work." "Busy with work," I practically scoffed. "I was busy trying to save us, Sarah, while you were busy destroying everything we built." I scrolled through the messages, pointing to specific dates, specific lies she'd told me to cover her tracks. "Remember this night? You said you had a late client meeting. You were with him, weren't you? Remember when you said you were too tired for me? You weren't too tired for him, were you?" Her face crumpled. She started to sob, a deep, racking sound that resonated through the silent room. "I'm so sorry, Ryan. Please, please forgive me." But forgiveness felt like a distant, impossible concept. The betrayal was too deep, the lies too ingrained. The image of her profile, her messages, the cold calculation of her deception had scorched any tenderness I had left. "Sorry doesn't fix this, Sarah," I said, my voice flat, empty of emotion. "Sorry doesn't erase 9 months of feeling like I was losing my mind. Sorry doesn't undo years of trust you just casually tossed aside." I stood, walking away from the table, away from the laptop, away from her. The room felt suffocating. What are you going to do?" she choked out, her voice raw. I turned back to her, my gaze hard, uncompromising. "I'm calling a lawyer first thing in the morning. I want a divorce, and I want you out of this house by the end of the week. Every single thing you own, packed and gone." Her sobs intensified, turning into gasps. "Ryan, please, where will I go? What about our life?" "Our life," I echoed, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "You ended our life, Sarah. You systematically dismantled it, piece by piece, while I was trying to water a garden that you'd already poisoned." I took a deep breath, the pain in my chest immense, but beneath it a strange, fierce sense of clarity. I have all the proof I need, Sarah. Every message, every login, every lie. If this gets ugly, I will use it all. So make it easy on yourself and make it easy on me. I walked away then, leaving her alone in the living room, surrounded by the wreckage of her own making. The silence that followed wasn't the suffocating silence of suspicion, but the hollow echo of a broken promise. The next few weeks were a painful blur of lawyers, paperwork, and the sterile emptiness of a house that was no longer a home. Sarah moved out, her things packed into boxes, her presence slowly fading from the rooms we had once shared. Her initial pleas turned into bitter resentment, but the threat of the evidence kept her from fighting too hard. The divorce was messy but swift, fueled by the irrefutable proof I had accumulated. I sold the house. The memories, good and bad, were too deeply ingrained in its walls. I needed a fresh start, a clean slate. I bought a small place outside of Denver, a fixer-upper with a large, neglected backyard. It was a blank canvas, full of potential, waiting for a patient hand to bring it back to life. My work slowly began to become my sanctuary again. I poured myself into my designs, the intricate patterns of nature a welcome contrast to the chaotic landscape of my shattered marriage. I found solace in the earth, in the promise of growth, in the simple, honest beauty of a seed pushing through soil. One afternoon, months later, I was at a local nursery, picking out some new perennials for my own backyard project. As I rounded a corner, my cart laden with vibrant flowers, I saw her. Sarah. She was with Mark, the Mark from her dating app, laughing, his arm casually draped around her shoulders. They looked happy, carefree, completely oblivious to the man standing just a few feet away, whose life they had both so carelessly dismantled. A wave of something washed over me, not anger, not even sadness, but a profound, almost detached sense of pity. They looked like two children playing a dangerous game, building a house of cards on a foundation of lies. Their happiness felt fragile, temporary, built on the very same deceit that had almost destroyed me. I turned my cart, moving quietly in the opposite direction, letting them remain in their bubble of manufactured bliss. I had my closure, I had my truth, and I had my new garden waiting for me, a place where I could cultivate real beauty, honest growth, and genuine peace. The monster was exposed, the lies unearthed, and I, Ryan Clark, was finally free to rebuild my own landscape, stronger and more resilient than before. My revenge wasn't in their suffering, but in my own survival, my own quiet reclaiming of my life. The bitter poison had been purged, and now, finally, I could breathe. The new normal wasn't perfect, but it was real. And that, after everything, was enough. I leaned back, the last piece of the puzzle finally clicking into place. The truth, ugly and undeniable, lay exposed. My revenge wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic confrontations. It was about reclaiming my life, one quiet, deliberate step at a time. The papers were ready, the evidence undeniable. She would get what she deserved, and I would finally be free. Denver had been our home, but now it was just mine again. My heart, once shattered, began to mend, piece by agonizing piece. This was my new beginning.